welcome to another edition of Lee's Feed. My name is Lee Coleman. I'll be your host. Today we have with us Mr. Larry Ivory, who's the president and CEO of the National Black Chamber of Commerce. He also serves as the chairman of the National Black Chamber of Commerce. We also have Mr. Malcolm Weems, who is the former director of CMS for the state of Illinois, Central Management Services. He now owns Weems Way Consulting. Today we're going to talk about Ms. Charlotte Roberts, who served as the certification chair for the BEP Council. And our question will be, why would she be removed from such a key position? In her position, she made sure that an adequate number of African Americans had an opportunity to do business with the state of Illinois through the BEP program, Business Enterprise Program. So that's what we're going to be discussing today with our guests. Stay tuned. Thank you for joining us. Good evening. Welcome to another session with Lee Coleman, the host of Lee's Feed. Today I have two distinguished guests, two individuals that I've known for a little bit. Larry, a little bit longer than my other guest, Mr. Malcolm Weems. But Larry Ivory is the president and CEO of the Illinois State Black Chamber. He's also the chairman of the National Black Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Malcolm Weems, another distinguished young brother that I know. He owns Weems Way Consulting, and he's a former director of CMS, Central Management Services for the state of Illinois. Okay, thank you, gentlemen, and welcome aboard Lee's Feed. And by the way, this program is sponsored by the Illinois State Black Chamber. Larry, what would we do without you, brother? Appreciate you.
That's right. That's right.
Sir, yes, sir. So, you know, I know you guys heard about the George Floyd verdict. We want to talk about that a little bit, but our main topic today is economic justice. That's important too. And the state of Illinois have a tremendous, they buy a lot of stuff, services and goods. And we need to watch those procurements to make sure we participate. And there are some boards that are set up that govern those procurements. And we want to talk about some people who are on those boards, and someone who was just relieved of her duty for no apparent reason, in our opinion. So we're going to talk about Ms. Charlotte Roberts after we talk a little bit about the Floyd George verdict. We'll go with Mr. Avery first. What do you think about that?
Well, Lee, you know, everybody was on pins and needles, waiting to hear what the verdict was going to be. And from an African-American perspective, I think we were relieved to see that justice was served. He was convicted on all three counts. If that had not happened, I can tell you there would be very little peace, and the economic fallout from that would have been significant, because I think African Americans and people who want justice know that justice would not be served if he had not been convicted. So I'm glad to see that the justice system in this situation has worked and done its job. We're going to see what the sentencing is going to be, because that's the last part of this whole verdict, is to make sure that the sentencing is appropriate for the crime that was committed.
Okay, Mr. Weems, what do you think?
You know, I think that jury did the world a favor. They definitely did this country a favor, because I think had it not come back the way it did, you know, I can only imagine what we'd be talking about right now. With that said, yes, you know, I'm happy that at least we now know that the law provides some protection for our people that are in this situation, because we've seen it denied so many times. So I'm happy to see that. But I think, like most Black folks, we know how it goes. That is, the symbolism is great. But now we need to see how policing will move forward after this, right? Does the Fraternal Order of Police get upset and then they stop doing their jobs? And then, you know, and they try to do these things to kind of, you know, force policy backwards rather than forward. I mean, there's a lot of things that we need to see happen next, including the sentencing. But yeah, I'm happy that a Black life, you know, you can't just kill us, because had he not been convicted, what that really meant, you all, is they could kill us anytime they want to, any old kind of way they want to. Now, I ain't saying that they're not gonna stop doing that, but I'm saying at least now we know the state of Minnesota says, no, you can't do that. And I think that's a good thing.
You know, I think when you talk about police reform, and we're going to get off of this subject and get to the meat of what we want to be, what we're here for, um, qualified immunity. Qualified immunity must be the major part of any police reform. And I think Joe Biden, rather than saying he's going to wait on Congress to bring about some reforms, I think he should take the lead on that. I really do. So, but anyway, you know, there's a young lady named Miss Charlotte Roberts,
Yeah.
and she was on the BEP board. Larry and Malcolm, tell us about the BEP board. We want to talk about what happened to Miss Charlotte Roberts, because she was a champion for economic issues for African Americans, and she sat on a very strategic board that made some great decisions about how that was going to look like for us as African Americans. So what is the procurement board? The BEP board, Larry. What is it? What is that?
Well, the BEP board is designed to represent minority participation and inclusion in terms of state contracting. That's the statutory power that the BEP Council have to kind of help set policies and address the issue of greater inclusion. Everything that we represent on that board is about greater inclusion, greater participation. And the governor selects a number of people to serve on that council that will represent the community as well as heads of agencies. And their job is to, like you said, to effectuate change and to make sure there's greater participation. And there's some rules and regulations like any board that you have. And Charlotte Robert was one of the best champion, and I would dare say one of the most knowledgeable people on the BEP Council. Not only did she serve on the BEP Council with distinction, but she come from a background of procurement, working for the county and then working with Malcolm Weems in strategic sourcing for CMS. So she knew the ins and outs, and she was not afraid of standing up and making sure that people follow the rules and the regulations. And I think she was fair, but she was a champion. And when she was removed, I think we suffered a significant loss.
Okay. Mr. Weems, why was there a need for such a council, BEP council, and BEP programs, period? Why was there a need for that?
Just like at the city and county, they have MBE, WBE, here in Cook County and in Chicago. The same went for the state. There was a disparity in our participation on state contracts, and they had to pass a law to tell folks, hey, we got to try to do this right. We need to try to make up from some of the systematic racism that was preventing people of color, and in the case of BEP, they put us in with Black folks and all the other minority groups, and then women, which would include white women and people with disabilities, and then they added on veterans. But all of this to say, there was a need for us to have a more level playing field. And so the General Assembly passed the BEP Act. And what it was supposed to do was to make sure a portion of the spend that the state does, again, some people don't know this, but I think the state of Illinois is the 19th largest economy in the world or something like that. Maybe I may have changed since I've been in state government, but that's not a small feat. And so they spend a lot of money every year, and 20% of that have an opportunity to come to our communities if they're playing fair. And so, that the act is designed to make sure that happens. Now, the enforcement of the act, I think that's what we're going to talk about, doesn't happen the way it should. And so we talk about a person like Charlotte Roberts, who's been in diversity and doing this for 20 plus years, almost 30 years. What everyone needs to understand is they pass a lot of laws. You see Congress is at work every day. You would think it'd be too many laws for us to follow, but they're always passing laws. Implementation. That's what the governor is responsible for, is to implement the laws that are passed. Now, the Black Caucus passed a law now that says, well, it says a bunch of things, but one of the things is it increases the goal percentage from 20 to 30%. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, if you can't make 20, how you going to make 30? Well, the truth of the matter should be that they should be applying the pressure on their agencies to make sure they follow the BEP Act. Instead, what they're doing is kind of doing it ad hoc and like, well, we really need to get this thing done. So we need a person, people that understand this process, how money is spent, and understand the history of what's happened and know the law so that our interests are being protected even when we're not watching, even when we're doing our other jobs outside of state government. You need to have faith in the people that work there.
Okay.
And Black businesses, that person was Charlotte Roberts from the time I entered state government.
Okay. Larry, what exactly was Charlotte's role, Charlotte Roberts, Queen? Well, what exactly was her role on that BEP council? And BEP stands for Business Enterprise, right? Am I right?
Yeah, business enterprise program. Yep.
Okay. So Larry, what was her role? Wait, first let's talk about how did the board work? How was it set up? How did you get on the board? And what was the protocol? How did it work?
Well, the governor selects people from business and from the community to serve on the BEP Council to be an advocate. And I always say to people, if you didn't want me to be an advocate for Black business, then you shouldn't have ever appointed me to be on the board, because that's what I represent. But it made sense for a person like me, a person like Charlotte, and others to be on the board to represent the interests of minorities, and specifically cases of Blacks also in terms of participation. And so it's incumbent upon us, Lee, to understand the significant role that the council plays in terms of making sure that it's adequate participation for Blacks when it comes to procurement. And as a good old friend Ken Duncan say, they got no discrimination when it comes to collecting taxes. There ought to be no discrimination when it comes to giving out contracts.
So give me a scenario, Larry. There's a situation where you might think there's the participation is not right. What does the council do? What comes before your council?
Well, the council helps to set the goals, and then the council also say, for example, if there's a procurement that comes out from Do It, and Do It has
what is Do It?
Do It is the technology arm, the tech arm for the state. Mike, what's the abbreviation?
It's the Department of Innovation and Technology.
Department of Innovation and Technology. I'm glad Malcolm's on the show with me.
I know all the acronyms. I spent a lot of time in there.
Okay, so Malcolm, were you on the BEP board also?
Only when I was the director of Central Management Services, I served as the chairman of the board because I was the director of the agency.
Okay, and what was Charlotte's role, Larry? She was
she was a board member, but she also chaired two committees. One was the certification committee that deals with all certification. So an event that, say, for example, we turned down someone who was trying to get BEP certification, they could appeal that to the BEP certification committee. Charlotte chaired that particular committee, right, which meant that their attorneys and they could come before the council and plead their case, and we could overturn the staff's opinion if we saw so fit based upon the information that we gleaned from the conversation. Then she also chaired on one of the most important committees, I think, is compliance. Compliance is, like Malcolm said, you can have a law, but you got to have compliance. Who's making sure that people are following the law, that there's compliance, that if there's a 20% goal, that someone doesn't just decide that they're only going to do 10%, or they're going to do 5%, and there's no consequence. So compliance is essential and very important. And so she chaired two committees that had a great deal of impact in terms of one certification, and more importantly, on the compliance side.
Okay, so we know that the governor puts, he appoints people to the board. You sit on the board, and you safeguard and you watch over like a watchdog over the implementation supposedly of this program. So, what's the racial makeup, Malcolm, of that board? Female, gender, and ethnicity.
Well, but currently I don't know the makeup now. They've changed. They just put in new. But I'll take this. There's not a lot. Oddly enough, there aren't any Black men, I believe, on the board outside of if there's someone that works for the governor. Meaning, so there are members of the board that are agency people. They work in the agencies. So I think they have one Black guy, gentleman there. But in terms of Black women, outside of the people, again, the director and the staff from CMS, I don't believe they have many Black women anymore after they've gotten rid of Charlotte. So again, you can correct me, Larry, but I think the numbers you're looking for, there's not a lot of us there, and now we are indeed one less.
Yeah, you had Sharon Matthews.
Oh, Sharon Matthews, but again, she's also
yeah.
a person that works for the state. We don't have any people outside of, and what this board is supposed to do is to kind of speak truth to power to the state agencies and give real business people, right, and business leaders an opportunity to say, hey, we see how you all are working. Y'all need to make some changes because the money's not going where it's supposed to go. Now, if you hamper those people or throw them off the board because they're telling you where you're doing something wrong, how are you going to ever improve what you're doing? And so, yeah, so as you can see, so regardless of how they do it, even the people that they have of color, if they work for the governor, they're not saying the governor's bad. They're going to say, well, we're working on it, and they're going to try to come and tell those other people of color, we're working on it, and this is the only way we can do it, because they're worried about their job.
So is that a paper tiger? So it's a whole board of paper tiger? If you've got mostly individuals who work in government, who's appointed, who sit there on behalf of the governor, we got a few civilians, from different walks of life. So is that really a good fit for actually doing what it's supposed to do?
I believe this. I really believe that I don't want to ever diss my people in their predicament, but I always say this. When you are charged with public trust, right, we as the public who will clamor to have Black representation,
right,
are expecting that Black representation to represent us, not as if they're an elected official, but you understand our plight, so help us through, right? You ain't gotta break no rules, but help us through. I believe the brothers and sisters, sorry about that. I believe that the brothers and sisters that are engaged in working for the governor sometimes are put in a position that they don't have the courage to deal with. And I think, unfortunately for us, it always comes when voices, challenge the system, and they are unable to support us. There's no reason that they would be against us, because everything we're talking about is Black opportunity to do business. There should be nobody against that, but they're put up in front of us to tell us why it's not happening, but not given the power to take what we give to them and go back and say, well, let's change this, right? They're only given the ability to tell us the bad news, never the ability to actually do something that would improve the situation.
Okay, now we got Ms. Roberts, okay? Should we fight? Should we use every weapon in our arsenal to get her back on this council? How valuable is she? What does she do, in you guys' opinion, that makes her so valuable?
Well, I'd say this real quick, is that, the Supreme Court is an important battle, and everyone understands the Supreme Court can be conservative or it can be more liberal. And the appointment on the Supreme Court tilts the balance of power in terms of how they look at legislation. So if you all of a sudden move a Charlotte Roberts out and move a white female in, who may not have—
Is that what happened, Larry? Is that what happened?
That's exactly what happened.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Okay, how long has Charlotte served on the board? What are the terms like? Are they staggered?
Well, there's some people who served on the board like myself for a good number of years. Charlotte has served, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Malcolm, you may correct me, but Charlotte's been on the board for 2 to 3 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, about that long, maybe a little bit longer. She used to be represent, when I was the director of CMS, she was at the board meeting because I made her my chief diversity officer for the agency. So all of BEP operations ran under her. So she was on the board always in some form or fashion for the last 10 years.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
So what should we be doing as citizens? What about the Black Caucus? What should we be doing to get to the governor to say, hey, we had a representative on this board that really did what they were supposed to do. They spoke truth to power. And now you replace her with an individual. Now I'm understanding that the person that she was replaced with had no experience in this area. Am I right or wrong?
She worked in procurement but she is not known as an advocate for the minority business community. I'm not calling her saying she's racist or anything. What the truth of the matter is, she is not the advocate with the history and the ability and the know-how and the trust of a Charlotte Roberts. They brought in somebody that was not going to speak the truth to power because she's not in the same boat that we're in. She's not a Black woman. She's a white woman. She may want to help, but she doesn't feel the sense of urgency that we would feel because we know we ain't no time to waste, right? These are things that Charlotte already knows. And so to remove her, the real question has to be why. There are other members of that board that have been members longer than Charlotte. Charlotte hasn't missed any meetings. Everybody else missed meetings. Charlotte hadn't missed a meeting on that board, and she runs 2 committees.
So she was committed to this.
Yes, and so you don't take out Michael Jordan just because you want to let a rookie play.
Right.
You play with Michael Jordan until Mike's legs don't work. Well, Charlotte's not. She ain't in that situation, and in fact, they ended her term early. So what that is they took an action against her. And so the only thing that we can think of that would have done it is when she, brought an issue about $100 million contract with a 1% goal on it.
Wow.
And so she pushed back. And again, if you ask other folks, they will tell you, well, no, there's other stuff. But that's what happened. She fought about that issue, and then she was kicked off the board. They can say it's some other stuff, and that's fine. But the bottom line is, why shut down a person that is trusted by the business community to help them? You use that person. You use that person to make sure your policies understand these people that you say you're trying to help.
If you're committed, committed to that.
That is correct.
So what do we do? What do we do, gentlemen? What can we do, myself and other Black people, in the communities and in, community groups and elected officials? Larry, what can we do? What should we be doing to say we really want her back on that board?
Well, Lee, I think we're going to have to, just like in this issue with George Floyd, that people were speaking up, even in the midst of when George Floyd was losing his life, people were angry, shouting at the police to get his foot off the brother's neck, and they were engaged, and people stayed engaged. They marched in the streets, they protested, they made sure that their voices were heard. I think we got to be very careful of one particular thing, man, is the conditioning of Black people. And it goes back to slavery. When you take a look at slavery, when the masters had the slaves and when the slave tried to free himself and he was brought back, he was made an example of. And so psychologically, he was made such a terrible example of that it put the fear of God in everybody else. So no one else would ever dare try to be free because the consequences of freedom was severe. And what I see happening is really the same identical thing, is that here we have Charlotte's fighting to free procurement opportunities as an advocate for everybody, not just for Blacks, but for everyone. And here, because she stands up and speaks out and the advocate, then she is removed from the committee, no different than the slave was brought back in and made an example of. They're trying to make an example. And if we sit back and don't speak out, and that's why, Lee, I'm so glad to be on Lee's feed today and be a sponsor of this program, because we got to have a voice and we got to make sure that people understand our voice. When the people speak, my favorite comment is the government for the people, by the people, shall not perish. When the people speak, government has to listen.
Okay, this is at the governor's door. Then how do we get him to understand exactly what you said? What do we do, Malcolm?
I'm gonna go out a little bit rough rider because I think Larry's absolutely right. But I think, and in fact, I just want to show you my shirt because it says here, Black voter, make me an offer. And I think that should be our approach to this governor. All of us have grown up wanting to fit in when you were young and all of that. And I believe that there are some Black folks that, even may work for the governor, that they want the right thing to happen. They understand everything we're talking about because they live it too. But to what Larry is saying, the politics of using one of us to control another one of us, right? To directly there's a black issue, I don't want to deal with it. Get my black person to go talk to them. They can't call me racist because I use my
That's right. That's right. That's
Negro to
strategy.
come talk to them. And so our first thing has to be, that's great. You can send us the black person to talk, you know, brother, sister, whoever it is, great. We don't want to talk to you because you already agree with us. You're black. You don't have, you can say you don't like our method, but everything we're talking about, you agree with. Your mama's black, your daddy's black, right? So having us fight with you and using you as a stop, right? Because you can't never get past that black. If you're black with an issue, trying to get to the governor, you know, if they're putting a black person in front of you, that black person isn't there to take the governor the message and say, hey, you got to do something. He's there to tell all you Negroes, be quiet, calm down, we're your friend. Remember that time we did this? I mean, and I'm not talking about people specifically, or so, you know, whatever. But the point is, that's the mentality. So all we really want to be able to do is, governor, if it's serious enough, right? Governor, if you want to come and talk to our people about we should support you again, talk to us straight up. If you tell us the right thing, we'll go tell everybody the good news. But right now, it's not good news. And I think we need to be able to say that to him. We don't want an in-between person. We want to hear you talk to black people.
Will he meet with you?
Right. And listen, he still has to remember we're operating under, you know, he like Jesse White versus Emil Jones because he was the more docile Negro. He said that. He said that.
I remember reading that. Right.
So that tells you the mentality of the man. So if we're the ones that are loud, that make things harder, difficult, and he doesn't have an answer, you know, the question is, are you just going to try to go find the docile Negro to talk to, or are you just going to hear us about what? Because this is our real pain. This isn't for show, for a job for us. We live this. So I'd like for us to put it on his doorstep with a petition of some sort to get this man to say, we're not playing. We're not going away. These are our lives. And I think if he cares about it, he should respond.
And we need to use social media, this program and other programs, to make sure he gets the message. Because I remember, Malcolm, I don't know if you were in that meeting, May of 2019, when there was a controversy or a promise by him to put a black on each corporate board. I remember that.
I remember hearing about this. I was not at that meeting.
I know Larry was in that meeting, so was I.
Oh, yeah.
That was a Friday. And we left that meeting with a promise from him. And here's what he said. These are his words. And we've got the mechanism to do this, but we need to work together. And I'm with you. Yeah. He said, those people who promise you things, there should be a report card. And when he said that, and he said, we need to call them out. So we left that meeting on Friday, thinking we had a deal. And over the weekend, he had put his people to work to make sure it worked out the way he had promised us. By Monday, he had totally reneged. So why don't we use some things that we could talk about off the air to start giving the governor and his agencies a report card? And we've got some things here at least for you to do that. We already got the situation set up. So we got the mechanism set up. So what do you think about that, Larry?
I think it's a great idea. I think we have to do everything that we possibly can in order to fight for what we believe in. This country was built on fighting against those who would control it. We are obligated to fight for the next generation. And for us to do anything less than that is a tragedy, in my opinion. And, we can't step back and be concerned about the consequences because, the problem is, Lee, every time that we stand up and speak truth to power, then we understand there is consequences. And there has been consequences for our organization because they've worked hard at trying to undermine us, not having us to do the things that we were doing. Everybody knows the history of, we've asked the governor for a meeting at least 10 or 12 times and has not been given the opportunity to sit down with the governor to have a conversation. We have our own legislators like Jahan Gordon and others who I've asked to set a meeting up, but we've had no meetings done at this point in time. And he's the only governor in the history that we've been around for 20 something years, and there's no other chamber like us. No matter how many chambers come up, they're not the Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce with our legacy, our background, and our leadership. And we have not been afforded the opportunity. But this is beyond the chamber. It comes down to our own interests, and there's no interest like self-interest. Charlotte Roberts is a value to the council. It's a value to Black people. When they move her, they hurt you. They hurt every Black business. They hurt every Black organization. They hurt every Black person, young person who hasn't got an opportunity, who wants to start a business. They hurt them. And so we have to fight to make sure that we don't lose sight of when people fight for us. Because what happens is that you can find people say, look, every time I throw down for my people, they don't fight for me. And then all of a sudden you get this sense of psychological damage that we say, well, every time we sit up and fight, they don't fight with us. So maybe we just won't fight. And where we're going to be then? So we got to be very careful of the psychological warfare that's being played out here. And I'm a guy who understands a little bit about psychology. And this is a wrong message. And the governor can fix this by saying, look, Charlotte, let's take a look. Charlotte was one of the most knowledgeable people. She sat on several committees. She never missed a meeting, like Malcolm said. She has a significant background in strategic sourcing, in procurement, in diversity. She knows the rules and regulations, and she's a professional. And why would you remove a person to have all those skill set, and like you said, put someone in the game that does not have the same skill sets, if you're not trying to undermine Black participation? But remember, there's an election coming. And when election comes, people are going to talk about the things. This is an important issue for the governor to address, because we're going to talk about it. Other people are talking about it. And it's an important issue. And it's one of those issues that I think he can do something about easily. And he ought to act quickly, swiftly, and show leadership.
Let's do what he said to do. He said that if there's anyone who's hindering you, and they've got a bad report card, then we need to give them a grade. We need to take a look at that. And I would like to get to you with you guys offline, because I know Charlotte also. In fact, she's from my city, the city of East St. Louis. So she's a home girl. And, that has nothing to do with it, but it's okay too. We need to support this sister, because I know she speaks truth to power. She's fearless. And, it's like the uppity Negro thing, who are you that speak up? You get back there like the rest of them. Mind, young Negro, we got the power, but we've got to support these kinds of, like Larry Ivory, like Malcolm, you too. When we have brothers and sisters who are out there knowing it, speaking it, and have the courage to do it, we've got to support them. Harriet Tubman could free 300 slaves, weighing 90 pounds, running through swamps and things like that. What are we afraid of?
Right.
Yeah, so, hey, I'd like to give it to you guys. Time is up, but I really appreciate you guys. So we've got to put something together for Miss Charlotte Roberts.
Yes.
We got to be committed to this. And we got to make it work, because we have the tools to do this now. It's not like you got to beg someone to put you out there anymore, because we got our own tools now. This station and other social mediums. So, hey, I appreciate you, brothers. Let's get together really soon. Larry, we'll leave it up to you to set that meeting up, okay? Between yourself and Malcolm, and let's get this together, and let's show them that we're not going to let them do our sister like that. Not because only she's a sister, but she's a valuable sister who does her job and did her job. We need to support her. And I'm on board.
Lee, let me say this, man. We support.
Go ahead.
We support Lee's Feed, and because we can't do anything without getting our voices out there. So I'm encouraged and proud of the work that you've done in terms of getting the message out there, because some people don't even want to talk about this. They're afraid to talk about it, but you're not afraid of it. I've watched you over the years when you're working for the Illinois Department of Transportation. We gave you an award that, even though you're a part of our team, you got the award because you did what normal people never had the courage to do. And so I just want to say, keep up the good work, what you're doing. And Malcolm and I should be back to talk about other issues like the marijuana issue, that all this money is being spent. I'm trying to find out when it's coming back to our community, when we're going to get a license, all those things. It ain't happening. And we ought to address that. It ought to be swept under the rug.
Absolutely. 42% of Black men in jail on marijuana charges.
Right.
Yeah.
And we can't sell none. Now we can't sell none when it's legal.
Can you believe that? And it's time out for that crap. Judge Floyd George, we're sick and freaking tired of this BS, man. And it's up to us as black men with the life that we have left in us. I'm older than both of you guys. So like Mom Mabley said, she was married to this old man that she didn't like. And
Yeah.
so, but she married him because her father forced her to, and he was 90 years old. And so when he died, she had him cremated, and they said, "Do you want the ash?" She said, "Hell no, burn them up too. I don't want anything." And so his brother attended the funeral. So the undertaker said, "How old are you, Pops?" He said, 91, 93. And the undertaker said, "They ain't no need of you going home." So look at, man. Yes, sir. So look, let's do this. So I'll look for Larry to set something up, and we're going to get back together. We're going to talk about Charlotte again, like that petition drive you're talking about. Let's do that. Let's go to the doorsteps of the people that need to know that we mean business by Charlotte, and we're going to do what the governor told us to do. Give him a grade.
That's right.
Okay?
Absolutely.
See you guys later, man. Take care of yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, brother.